Hello, innovators. I'm Todd Wyant, and welcome to the Bridging the Gap podcast presented by Applied Software. You're invited to join our MEP and construction innovation adventure with the mission to propel this great industry forward. My guest today is Gil Mayron. He is the founder and CEO of Cobot Nations, Architects of Automation. Gil is a pioneer of the consumer 3D printing industry as the founder and CEO of Botmill 3D, which manufactured and sold the first fully assembled consumer 3D printers. Botmill was acquired by 3D Systems Corp, and Gil continued to lead corporate development strategies for the consumer division at 3D Systems. He composed the first ever licensing deals involving 3D printing with Sony, Viacom, NBA, DreamWorks, and many others. Welcome to the show, Gil.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
Absolutely. Well, how'd you get into the industry to begin with?
3D printing, I got into that due to my older brother. He was doing his PhD in computer engineering. The local university, they had a full color 3D printer, a very expensive one. I went over to take a look, put some Google alerts. Within a few weeks, RepRap, R-E-P-R-A-P, was an open source project that was developed by a professor out of Austria. His name was Adrian Bauer. And I contacted him and got the rights to make the first fully assembled consumer 3D printer. And we had a huge backlog and sold the company, and here I am now. So yeah, that's kind of how it started with 3D printing. After my acquisition was over, I sat on a few boards, one for a hardware company out of Toronto, Mosaic Manufacturing. I did quite a bit of work with Polymaker, one of the largest filament providers in 3D printing to date. We know them quite well. I did a lot of work for HP. We even have one of their 3D printers at our facility here, Cobot Nation, the multi-jet fusion printer. But fast forward all the way to today, the reason why we got into automation was the same reason why we got into 3D printing, which was expiring patents, which was incredible chaos. And so when you bring a straight line to chaos, usually you can figure out a way to make something good out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. What was one of the biggest hurdles in getting started with 3D printing?
Well, at the time, nobody had ever made such a thing. So the first prototype I made was with a PVC pipe, a hot glue gun, and maybe a motor or two, and that was it. And so, no, there were a lot of hurdles in the same way that we have a lot of hurdles that we had to deal with here at Cobot Nation. So, but those hurdles could be a number of things. It could be monetary, it could be inventory, it could be engineering, it could be shipping. Each one of those printers had 1,800 moving parts, so there's no way any one of them was ever shipped in any sort of normal capacity at the time. So a lot of things can happen, yeah.
Yeah. So I love that line that you said a minute ago on creating a straight line from chaos and making something out of that. How is there a certain kind of thought process or culture that you need to put in place in order to really make something out of chaos?
Yeah, well, I mean, chaos, it's a word for something, right? And so when I say chaos, what I see is an industry ripe for consolidation. An industry where it's very clear that you will have hundreds of new players coming into it. And then the question comes up, which is, well, when you have so many players coming into it in very similar fashion to 3D printing a number of years ago, let's say right before Amazon put 3D printers on Amazon, things were starting to pick up. Consumer home 3D printer was a big thing they were talking about, all that kind of stuff. And so, but what people didn't realize is that even though in 3D printing, the chart is always going up. It's unbelievable, never goes down. But what they don't talk about is that even though it's going up, that may be due to the fact that, great, this year you had 100 new 3D printer companies come out. All of them follow the same business model as all the others. All of them have very similar technology. All of them are going to consolidate or fail. But somehow the industry continued to grow because they did affect a big mass of people. And so we saw the exact same thing here in automation. That was spawned by collaborative robots, which is a very similar situation to 3D printing. A PhD student put together this module. This module happened to work on a few different joints, put them all together. Now you have a 6-axis robotic arm, and so on and so forth. The unfortunate part is that the way that they went about introducing these arms is in a way where it kind of made it seem like it's really easy if you have a company to buy one of these things and to install it, to service it, all the above, right? And that just proves to not be true whatsoever at all, to not even like a 1%. So that's when we see something along the lines of chaos, that's what I look at. And in my personal journey, if I feel like there's a way to get something done, it doesn't really matter how long it takes. You just kind of go, right? And if you know you're doing the right thing, you'll see signs along the way that confirmation. Your confidence will gain. And so we saw that. We saw it in 3D printing. It worked out very well. We saw it here in automation. It's working out extremely well. We've never seen a business like this before. So yeah.
Nice. Well, you brought up collaborative robotics. How do you define that for those listening?
Yeah.
And then how can collaborative robotics really help augment human capabilities?
Yeah. So first off, let's define what a cobot or collaborative robot is. A cobot is a machine that has the ability to work with or without a human. That's what the definition is today. At Cobot Nation, we build automation devices. We build robotics. The question becomes, is a 6-axis robotic arm right for the customer when all they're doing is a painting? A painting booth with like some small object. You don't need some massive arm that's twirling all around to paint it. Not to mention the costs and things involved there. So the way that we define a cobot is no matter what we make for the customer, if a human is involved there, that is a cobot. So for example, even a Roomba vacuum cleaner, that's a cobot. Mm-hmm. That's working around you. It's working with you. It's still doing something. It can kind of work on its own, but it can have some assistance here and there. And then what was the second part of the question? Sorry.
How does it really help augment the human capabilities?
Sure. So I think that's where there's some interesting stuff that comes up. So in one sense, you want to make sure that humans have jobs, right? You want to make sure that there's an economy going, people are doing things, there's a reason for it. At the same time, we can't be oblivious to the fact that some of these jobs in manufacturing specifically are very mundane, very old. To be honest, they require very little brain power whatsoever, because what that person is doing is what we're replacing with a robot. And what the robot is doing, we're not sitting there and programming in an immense amount of AI or optimization tools, not yet, because we're dealing with the first few applications for these customers. Mm-hmm. And so you'll see a few things. First off, when the customer first adopts automation, they never do the entire facility at once. That's crazy. It's a huge expense, and you wouldn't know what you're doing. You have to phase it in. Not only that, you're phasing it in because you also want to do right by your people. So some of the people where the robot may be replacing, you can move them to another part of the line. And maybe what they're doing now is differentiating between two products that where they were in the line, they could do it because they were human. They have a brain, they have eyes, they can do it. But maybe the robot isn't there yet. So they're going to go and help that robot out. But no matter what, the company knows that they have maybe a 20% throughput increase. They know that the person is not going to have the same shoulder injury every single, every quarter, whatever the case may be. And we run into a lot of those kind of things. So the first step is not really how the robot can help the human, it's how the human can help the robot. And then afterwards is what more can you do to optimize? Because the whole thing here is that if a company is not going to automate and they have processes that should be automated, that's perfectly fine if they're willing to have their competition do it. So, and what would happen if you were down the street and you're a CNC shop, or let's say you're you're some sort of a lumber place, right? So you cut wood and you supply it to whatever, and 3 miles down the street you have another guy, same thing. Well, one of you decides to automate one process, and yeah, the sales cycle might have taken 1.5 years, no problem. The other guy didn't even find out until you were already automating. They're probably 1.5 years or 2 years behind. And at that point, and this is what I mean, we've never seen business like this before. The customers we're dealing with, the scale is so large. We do not know how another competitor can come in to compete with that when they're so far behind on the timeline. Once you automate, that margin increases immediately. So again, I think it's one of those things where we do want to have a soft spot for humans. At the same time, we also need to do what's right. We need to do what's coming. We need to do what's going to help things in the future. And automation will do a lot more good than what the perceived initial bad may be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the timeline issue that you bring up is a excellent point. We've talked about that a lot here on the show too, that if you delay the process, it's a journey. You can't just flip a switch and turn everything on and expect to get the results the next day. It's a journey and it's a process. And if you're not on that now, by the time that you realize that you need to do it, there's going to be people so far ahead of you that now you're just playing catch up to get to where they were 2 years ago instead of actually competing with them today. So taking that quick action for sure. So on the automation front and kind of picturing in the human element, what becomes the effect on people's lives when you bring in the automation, knowing that there is that kind of fair or unfair, that hesitancy that people have of, oh, a robot's coming in and it's taking over my job and I'm going to be out of work. How do you communicate that message to people to kind of calm their fears?
So, yeah, no, that's a great question, by the way. So 2 years ago, if we were doing the same method of going out to get a deal, a sale, the kind of response we would have received from a customer, especially when we go to do an on-site, which we do with every single customer, you have to in this business, you would have seen employees give you a second look. You would have seen them, well, I'll tell you that 2 years ago, we had to disguise ourselves. We weren't wearing Cobot Nation hats when we walked into a facility. We weren't allowed to wear certain things. Many of the companies we're working with now for the last 2 years still don't want us to come in and let anybody know who they're working with. But at the same time, the new inquiries that we're getting now, at least for the last 6 months, it seems to me like the companies are more apt to moving now. In other words, you have enough cobots out there. You have enough knowledge out there. Now they finally feel the stress. Now they feel the pressure of, well, I know something's there. If I don't do it, that college student, with an Arduino is going to come out with something tomorrow. What am I going to do? And so it's and these things are happening. So I think it's one of those things where we just need to be really careful with how we go about it. But at the end of the day, full automation is coming. It's full automation. Anything we do with manufacturing, we're going to the nth degree. Any customer that we have where they only want to do, we have CNCs, we have presses, we have all this stuff. Yeah, we only want to automate the CNC. It's never happened. They want to automate everything. And so whether we like it or not, we will need to find other areas to do things. Now, one thing I will say is this. Any one of our customers who automates with us, they know exactly what the throughput increase would be. They know exactly what's happening with labor and payroll and all that kind of stuff. They know exactly how much their margins are going to go up. And the argument that we try to make to some of these customers, because we have nothing to lose, once they use us for a solution, that's it. There's nowhere else to go. The argument we try to make to them is this. Many of them have an issue with raising minimum wage, yet you're automating, yet you're increasing throughput, yet you're getting rid of people, but you're not going to raise the minimum wage. So there's certain things that I want to point out there that it's not really, just a human fault. The companies could be doing better. They could be doing more. They could be doing right. And not only that, usually when automation comes in, yes, you can make the assumption that now these people need to learn how to operate the robots. The fact of the matter is that these robots operate quite well on their own. You don't want somebody to touch them because you could potentially hurt it. But what that means is that these humans should be going into other skilled areas that don't involve as much manual labor. And these areas should be substantially higher in pay, substantially. And so, again, the misconception is that because I do something where I take this item and put it here, I should only get paid X. Yet now they're bringing in a robot and they have absolutely nobody else to pay anymore, and the whole thing is paid for. They're only making profit now. The companies need to do right by the people.
Yeah. So you said that, in the last kind of 6 months, there's been maybe a shift in perception, if you will. What do you think is kind of sparking that in the recent trend lines?
I think they're embracing it because now they know they have no choice. I also think that politics plays a big role in this. For example, even us, where we go to buy raw materials around the world and things like that, we've had to rethink about how we go about doing things. It's not just us. Every
Yeah.
manufacturer, every construction company out there, everybody has the exact same problem, specifically on logistics. And so these things are playing a part. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So looking out kind of the next maybe 5-10 years, what role does robotics really play in manufacturing and construction?
I think robotics in manufacturing will play a role of greater than 70% of automation in all manufacturing throughout the course of 10 years. I think the adoption rate is going to be way faster than whatever we think. So if we're throwing out numbers like 10, 20, 30 years, I think we should be throwing out numbers like 24 months, 36 months, 5 years at the most.
Interesting.
The things that we're doing, the mandates that we're getting from some of the customers, some of our customers have 600 plus facilities, and they want to automate all of them by 2025. That's not an easy endeavor.
Yeah, that's not that far away. 2025 is pretty close.
There's reasons for this. So, and construction would certainly be able to resonate with this one topic. Many companies out there, whether we like it or not, are unionized. And so when you are a company where maybe some of the facilities are unionized, some are not, but you've got the same process everywhere. And now you find yourself in a position where I know I have to automate, but how do I navigate this one situation here where we have all these people and they know what's coming and we know what's coming, but we have no idea how to navigate that. And so this is why the response that we're getting from a lot of these companies who have scenarios like that is, how fast can you get the whole thing done? And it's because it's fear. It's we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what would happen if we automate only one facility, wait 3 months, and what happens with that personnel? Are they going to walk out? Well, what's going to happen there? So we need to go as fast as possible. So it's really interesting to see what fear, pressure, things like that do to people. And we're seeing in a very big way. Another item would be this: if any manufacturing or construction order things from China, that's fine, except for now you have dollar limit risk endeavors. So if I were to go and spend $2 million on inventory from a company in China, how do I know a sanction is not going to come up today? And there goes my $2 million, and I didn't get the product. We're all incredibly happy. So it's a whole thing. But these are real big issues happening out there, and so
yeah, for sure. So with construction and manufacturing, those lines are really starting to blur. Construction is becoming a lot more manufacturing centric. What does the merger between those two industries really look like for you?
Sure. So my one example that I can give, obviously coming from 3D printing, I've seen an immense amount of, I like to call them crane extruders. They're just really large extrusion type devices. We've seen other companies like Local Motors, where they were 3D printing full cars. So they put an extruder on a shipping container, and they built the car within there. And the reason why I bring that up is because I think when you look at manufacturing and construction, if I had to make an educated guess, I would say that we will see a lot of modules start to come out much, much more. These modules in the past may have looked a little more like, I don't know, RV types or things like that, right? But now I think you'll see that these modules are so high tech, so advanced, so much more cost efficient, and so much easier to construct and put together. So in other words, you're not sitting there on a piece of land, putting up a pile of wood, and cover everything you need to do. Robots have the ability to do it. Not only that, I would imagine it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Let's talk about timelines. Where at CES, we're in Las Vegas, so we have a beautiful, we can go into all the trade shows if we want to. But we're at CES, they had some construction equipment out there. So we're talking about heavy machinery, no humans on it. And they were able to identify the different types of, let's call it dirt or soil or whatever the case may be. They were able to dig at different tolerances. They were able to make it perfect, the piece of land. And it really opened your eyes to what's to come there. And I think you're 100% right. Manufacturing is getting a little more into construction. Construction kind of got a little bit more into manufacturing. And you're kind of wondering, well, what happened to those jobs where, that one guy came out and painted the whole house and the whole thing? We just don't see it anymore. So, I mean, even we're actually working on a painting application right now where, I mean, it'll be very easy for us to paint a room with just a robot and, control stick. So these are things we're working on.
Yeah. Well, what do you think maybe the biggest lessons that each industry can really learn from each other?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't think I would have an answer there. I think one thing I could say just to fill in some white space. But one thing that I could probably say here is, look, in 3D printing specifically, we do have to have at least an awareness of caution due to the fact that, it's pouring concrete, but how did they get that to go through that extruder? What else did they put in there to make that happen? And what's that really going to look like in 20 years when the sun has hit it? And so I think there's a lot of unknowns. I think we can see the pieces to the puzzle kind of come together. And in my mind, that comes together in lower cost, higher adoption, faster to market, all those kind of things that we look at in like software and, and all that kind of stuff. And so I think we will see automation will play a part. I think 3D printing will probably play a little bit of a faster part. I think you have other methods out there as well, which we'll see to play very interesting parts. So we've seen bricklaying robots, which are extremely sophisticated, by the way. We're not talking about one bricklaying robot that makes a whole house. We're talking about like a swarm of robots that make the whole house.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And these things are there. And if you can imagine, whoever did that, it's not that difficult to understand how that could be the case with drones as well. So, all these things play a part. But I think to what one can learn from it, I don't think I'd be an expert enough to answer the question. So.
Yeah, fair enough. So I could give you kind of all power on innovation, and you
Sure.
can innovate one thing in the industry. What would you choose to innovate?
I would choose to do exactly what I'm doing. And the reason for that is because what I'm doing now, we're automating whatever we want to automate. We're going after any industry we feel that is behind, that we need to push a little further forward, is no problem. I'm doing exactly what I wanted to do. I'm innovating exactly in the area where I feel like I should be innovating at this moment in time. The deals that we're getting are larger than any deals we've ever seen in the history of manufacturing. Maybe not in the history of construction, but that's a little bit of a different story. So no, I think we're on the right path here, and I think it's one of those things where right now, today, the collaborative robot is loosely defined as a 6-axis robotic arm. I think a lot of people are going to be surprised what that looks like in 24 months or even 18 months for that matter. We build gantry systems for customers. So systems where it's almost like an enclosed box, but that's where we do the automation. So we didn't need a robotic arm, but we just had something else, right? So we call it gantry. Mm-hmm. These gantries are going to look like cobots too. And what's the difference? And so I think we're going to see a lot of robots start to come into our lives, and I think the question becomes, how long is it going to take us to be acclimated to it? So,
yeah. Any guesses there on how long that acclimation process will take?
I don't know. I mean, we're going to force it upon people, but aside from that, no idea. So, I'd like to say yesterday, but that's not the case.
Nice. Yeah. As soon as possible.
Yeah. As soon as possible. Yeah.
Nice. Well, how do people find out more information on you and Cobot and connect with you?
Sure. Yeah, no. So Cobot Nation, obviously our website, we have a wealth of information on there. We try to pride ourselves on putting more out there than what anybody else would do or our perceived competitors would do. LinkedIn is a great way for somebody to get in touch with me. If anybody goes through any of our channels, so Cobot Nation, we have Instagram, we have LinkedIn, we have Facebook, everything. They can always get in touch with me any which way. I'm sure somebody here will pass a note off to me, no problem.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, final question for you. What does innovation mean to you?
Oh, that is a great question. I have never been asked that question. I think what innovation means to me personally is the ability to push forward with new logical ideas that have an effect on maybe a specific industry, specific demographic, something like that, um, at your best possible ability, as fast as possible, as logical as possible, as resourceful as possible, all those kind of things, and that's really that's what I believe. So I don't know if that applies to innovation, but I think the way I was raised is if you believe you can do it and you have a logical way to get there. So it's not just like, oh, I believe I could be a pro tennis player, but I'm like 5'7". Like, no, you may want to think otherwise. If you believe you can do it, if there's a logical plan to get there, even if it doesn't follow that exact line, you're probably in the money. So
Yeah. Nice. I like the logical component too. It's not just kind of pie in the sky.
I hope so. Yeah.
There must be a plan to get there too.
Oh yeah, no, that would be a good thing. Yeah. So
Nice.
good.
Well, Gil, thanks so much for talking with us today and joining the show.
Todd, thank you so much. I thought this was great, and best of luck to everything in the future. And so yeah, we'll talk soon. Thank you.